but from the mothership. It's all about this concept. And remember, Babylon, that spirit is what's guiding all of this. Steven Spielberg's greatest movie, according to his idea, was a movie called E.T., the Extraterrestrial. And here again, get this. Here we have a visitor from outer space that has fallen to the earth. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? I just get that. And Lucifer falls in Revelation chapter 9, and when he falls to the earth, that star that falls to the earth, he has the key to the bottomless pit. That is the concept of the time when that bottomless pit is opened up, and the king of the bottomless pit, Abaddon, is released upon planet earth. That, in their notion, is the day when man's going to receive this great illumination, and he's going to become gods. But follow with me here. E.T. falls from heaven to the earth. He does all these things. He dies, and then he's resurrected again. Where have we heard that from? And right at the end, he touches this little boy's heart and gives him illumination. Now, in the posters for E.T., I want you to notice the symbolism here. The alien's finger giving illumination or light to the little boy's finger. That was based upon the Michelangelo painting in the Sistine Chapel of God giving illumination or life to Adam. Now remember, in this same painting, God has his arm around mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now let's get back to this devil or this demon that Aleister Crowley conjured up called Lamb. There's been some splinter groups after Crowley died that started up a continuation of the OTO and some of the other organizations that Aleister Crowley started. One of them, the director of who, a guy by the name of Kenneth Grant, who is the generally acknowledged successor to Crowley, went so far as to formalize the Lamb workings into something that he called the Cult of Lamb. We're going to quote from Grant's Typhonian OTO website. Here's what he says about the workings of Lamb today. Lamb is the present focus of an extraterrestrial and perhaps trans-plutonic energy which the OTO is required to communicate at this critical period. For we have now entered the 80s mentioned in the Book of the Law. It is our aim to obtain some insight not only into the nature of Lamb, but also into the possibilities of using the egg as an astral space capsule for traveling to Lamb's domain, or for exploring extraterrestrial spaces in the sense in which OTO tantric time travelers are exploring the tunnels of Set, which is another word for Satan, in intracosmic and chthonian capsules. Now, this Lamb statement came with a logo. I want you to take a look at the logo. And remember that he referenced this like, then it sounds weird, but he referenced something like this egg spaceship that was used to travel interdimensionally from the third dimension to the fourth dimension where Lamb came from. Remember the fourth kingdom. So take a look at the image, the upside down triangle. Remember the egg. Do you remember this guy? He has the same symbol upon his chest. And what did he come to the earth to? You might think I'm making this up, but I think all of these are slowly but surely revealing the secret and are the building blocks of the New World Order. Remember, media has so much power and so much influence in our culture and in our world today that the ideas that were long ago established by guys like Bacon and Dee and Eliphas Levi and Crowley are now being seen and shared amongst all people. The gospel of this New World Order is being spread. Now, when Crowley brought out this demon by the name of Lamb, he supposedly opened up a portal between our world and their world. Now, Crowley had two disciples, and this is where it gets really interesting, and it gets kind of weird too. Aleister Crowley had two disciples. You probably heard of these guys. The first guy was a guy by the name of Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons is a guy who started and did a lot of the early research in Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Remember, all these guys that used to be like John Dee and Bacon, and Isaac Newton, these guys were all mystics and occultists, but they were also scientists. And they were receiving ideas. Remember, the way Robert Flood talking about the way the blood flows through the heart, the circulation system. He received that by way of divination. Now, you probably remember a guy by the name of Nikola Tesla. Tesla was working along the same time with electricity as Thomas Edison. In fact, they were kind of in a little battle here about whether they were going to use Edison's AC or Tesla's DC. To power houses. But anyway, Tesla is the one who invented the Tesla coil, and there's all kinds of things on the internet about how Tesla invented a time machine or some way to warp yourself into another dimension or whatever. Undoubtedly, Tesla was working on some things that, were pretty startling, as it were. And the story is that immediately after he died, some government agents came in and stole all of his books. One of the things that I do know about Tesla was that Tesla admitted that he was receiving ideas about how to do things from who he called visitors or aliens or extraterrestrials. He was receiving divination. Familiar spirits were teaching him how to do some of the things he did. So think about this. Here is Jack Parsons. He is a direct philosophical descendant of Aleister Crowley. And he's a genius, and he's working on all these new inventions and doing all these things. Interestingly so, there seems to be a UFO connection here. But anyway, Jack Parsons, along with a guy by the name of L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard was the founder of Scientology. You know that thing that Tom Cruise is part of and all these big Hollywood stars are a part of? Well, that's who started that, L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons. Both of these guys were working together at one time to try to redo what Aleister Crowley did, and that is to bring Lamb back, because they had this idea that was taught to them by Crowley. The idea was that in the celestial kingdom, or in the spirit world, they were trying to bring the fruition of the fusion of the god and the goddess Babylon together to produce the Star Child, or Horus, or the combination of the mingling of the sons of God with the daughters of men. That is one of the things that they were actively working in. So now let's review just for a second. Here we have all these alchemists, listed on this list of the Priory of Zion. Their association with a Catholic monastery, Saint-Sulpice in Paris, France. And then we have Eliphas Levi, and then we have him giving inspiration to Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley then giving inspiration to L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons. The whole scientific world and the whole media world. Here we have John Travolta, and we have Tom Cruise, and all these other famous people who are still spreading the same gospel, giving it different names. I mentioned earlier that Aleister Crowley had such an influence upon media today, and this became apparent. You remember a little group called, little known group called the Beatles? You remember those guys? The Beatles came out with an album. I mean, these guys exploded all over the place. We've since found out that John Lennon actually admitted, of course he's dead now and he's probably in hell, but John Lennon actually admitted that at one time he made a pact with the devil. Here again, illumination, divination, familiar spirits working through these guys, the all-seeing eye of Ra giving enlightenment to guys like John Lennon. So here the Beatles came out. They're popular all over the world. They come out with an album called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Sounds innocent enough. Well, here are the Beatles, and they're in these little marching band outfits, and they're surrounded by people who they say have given them influence in their life or in their music. Sitting way up in the background of this is Aleister Crowley. They were a follower of his philosophies and the New World Order gospel that he was spreading, and that gospel is being spread even today. Here you have an album cover of Ozzy Osbourne. You remember this guy? I mean, he's still popular. People are still following Ozzy Osbourne. Some of the artists that are rising up now, these guys used to listen to the Beatles. They used to listen to Ozzy Osbourne. In Ozzy Osbourne's album, The Blizzard of Oz, he had a song called Mr. Crowley. You remember a group called Led Zeppelin. They wrote a song called Stairway to Heaven. Now, I think it was Jimmy Plant or Robert Page, one of the two, that actually lived in Aleister Crowley's mansion and ran an occult bookstore. And I believe it was under demonic inspiration that they wrote the song Stairway to Heaven. Remember, Stairway to Heaven has to do with the winding staircase of Freemasonry that brings men to godhood. Led Zeppelin used a logo on many of their albums. It was the triquetra, a symbol for three-strand DNA. They got this logo from a set of tarot cards that Aleister Crowley helped design. This particular tarot card, called the Hierophant, shows the Hierophant, or the high priest of illumination, or the priest of initiation, bringing people into a new world order, or a system of godhood. He's making the as above, so below sign. And it's said that he holds in his hands the keys to transformation. That key to transformation is the triple helix, three-strand DNA. Now, along this same time with Aleister Crowley, you have Madame Blavatsky. She comes out of Russia. She writes a couple of books. She's divining these familiar spirits. She's in contact with all these gods and aliens and all this nonsense. She writes a book, and here it is, called Isis Unveiled. And then we're talking about big books here. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of pages. Isis Unveiled. Well, Isis is Ashtaroth, Ishtar, Diana, Venus. Isis is Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Here again, that spirit that is leading everybody into a transfer of authority. Remember, Mystery Babylon is picturized in the scriptures as Jezebel. Jezebel's job and her role, you remember the vineyard that Naboth had, that Ahab wanted. And Ahab couldn't have it. Naboth wouldn't sell it to him. Jezebel got it for him. Jezebel, her spirit involves the transfer of authority. So here we have, so this spirit of Babylon is responsible for transferring this world from the old order to the new order. We have this guy in Germany by the name of Friedrich Nietzsche. Hard to pronounce some of these names. Anyway, Friedrich Nietzsche is the guy who coined the phrase, God is dead. Nietzsche wrote a book called Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and he conceptualized the idea of the Übermensch, or the Superman. I want you to think about that. This concept of the Superman was built upon the idea of transhumanism. In other words, that men had it within their ability to be more than just men, to rise up and become gods. So he has this concept of transhumanism that he calls the Superman. Into the 1930s we go with two guys by the name of Siegel and Schuster, who borrow this idea and turn it into a comic book called Superman. Now I want you to get this. Here is Superman, and not necessarily what he was then, but what he has become now is this symbol for American mythology. This symbol that, you remember the movie Superman, where Lois Lane actually calls him a god. Superman 2, where the god sleeps with the woman. Superman Returns, where Superman comes back to the earth, and oh, lo and behold, the god has mated with a human woman, and now they have a son. This is Osiris, and this is Isis, and their son is Horus, who represents the fusion of the human with the divine. Nietzsche's book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, you know, that deals with the whole idea of the Superman or transhumanism, was what inspired the German composer Richard Wagner to produce a song called Thus Spoke Zarathustra, based upon Nietzsche's book. It was this music that was the inspiration for the 1968 movie by director Stanley Kubrick called 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now I want you to think about this for a minute. I don't think anything's by accident. Here you have this movie, and 2001: The Space Odyssey is about evolution. You know, you have this monolith, and I want you to look at this image up on the screen here of this monolith and Kubrick's directing skills making it look like the capstone on an unfinished pyramid. But anyway, this movie deals with the evolution of mankind, and this song, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, is playing in the background. This movie eventually ends up with man's next stage of evolution in the form of the Star Child. It's the same thing that Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard conceptualized. It's the same thing that we have seen all throughout all these guys. And I want you to get this, because here's another hidden symbol here. 1968, the movie comes out. 2001 is when it's about. That's a span of exactly 33 years. Back during the days of Blavatsky, we have the evolution or the rising up of a secret society called the Thule Society in Germany. Now, Thule supposedly was a land referred to by the Greeks and Romans as being the North Country. It's the land where the Aryan or the super